everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Wednesday, February 12th, 2020 Board of Selectmen regular meeting. And item 1 on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I would ask you all to rise. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Item 2 on the agenda, I would invite Woodbridge Board of Education Superintendent Bob Gilbert up. Good evening, Bob.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see all of you. Another month has passed very quickly by. I'm going to pass out to you, as we do often, just a recent parent update. We sent out to all parents, so take one and pass it down. Tells you a little bit about all the good things we're doing and great things about our students and feature road happenings. So as I always do, I always first report on enrollment. So enrollment has, as you know, held steady earlier this year. And the last time I spoke to you, I mentioned that since the December break, we've seen an uptick in numbers. That continues. We're currently at 857 students. And while that's still below the projected 868, it's more than the 845 we had in September. So we're watching that and maintaining a close eye on how enrollment is progressing. We have passed the halfway point in the school year, and we only have one snow day so far. So how about that? And I'm knocking on wood as much as I possibly can about that. Our current fiscal year 20 budget, we are continuing to incur some expenses in regards to unanticipated student and staff needs. Costs continue to remain fluid at this time of the year, and we are still projecting a small surplus and continue to focus towards the end of the year to have a balanced budget. We currently have a surplus of around $20,000. We anticipate that at the next Finance Subcommittee meeting that surplus will go up a little bit more. But we did implement a spending freeze on all non-salary and non-contractual line items recently, as of our last Board of Education Finance Subcommittee meeting. And this will allow us to evaluate each request in greater depth, assess the priorities, and also identify any alternatives available while moving our education mission forward. And I have to say that I would like to just say that I'm very, very appreciative to the faculty and staff in the understanding of the spending freeze. The spending freezes have not been implemented in several years, but they have understood and been receptive to the understanding behind that. So again, we have a surplus. We anticipate that surplus will go up a little bit more at the next Finance Subcommittee meeting, and our spending freeze is there to do everything we can to ensure that we end the year in the black. Our next Finance Subcommittee meeting is on February 24th. In terms of the recommended and proposed FY21 operating budget, I just want to again say thank you to all of you as well as your Board of Finance colleagues for the positive responses that you gave and the comments regarding our budget presentation that included a 0.76% increase for next year. Also want to thank you for your responses and recognition of the outstanding student achievement data that we brought to you as well, and our staff and administration was very appreciative of hearing your comments. That does lead me into just mentioning that we did receive more good news. Each year, the State Department of Education for Connecticut puts out what's called an accountability report. And while we have not had a chance to fully review and digest the report, our overall accountability percentage rating went from 78.6% last year to 85.3%. Which is more evidence of ongoing success and student growth. I know those numbers don't mean a lot, but maybe at some point later down the road I can explain more about that. But just overall knowing that we're moving in the upward northeast direction, and that's where we want to be aiming for our kids. The Board of Education held a mid-year retreat this past Monday in the school library. The retreat was facilitated by Patrice McCarthy, who is the CABE, which is Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, the CABE Deputy Director and General Counsel, and we had an opportunity to review the board's own self-evaluation, roles and responsibilities, protocols at meetings, and things like that. So it was a good time, and we appreciate the commitment of our Board of Education members in spending another evening out for that endeavor. Our principal search process continues. The principal search committee is continuing its process with upcoming interviews, so that continues to move forward. Our current strategic plan, which was initiated my first year here, 2017, we are concluding that plan this year. It was meant to be a 3-year plan from 2017 to 2020. So given that that plan is sort of sunsetting, we are assembling a guiding coalition to prepare for the construction of the next strategic plan for Woodbridge Board of Education and Beecher Road School. I am looking for a few community members to serve on this committee, along with Board of Education representatives, parents, teachers, administration, and staff. So if anybody's interested, whether you're in the room or you're out there in watching on TV, please let us know. Please contact my office if you're interested in being possibly selected for that strategic plan coalition committee. The President's Day break is coming up this weekend. We will not have school this coming Monday the 17th and also on Tuesday the 18th. District and school offices will be open, though, however, on the 18th. I attended the CABE Legislative Breakfast that is held every year. It was held in Derby this past year. CABE leaders, that's again the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, those leaders and our various legislators that serve us here in Woodbridge were there. They spoke and outlined various areas that may be addressed by upcoming legislation, including special education funding, shared services, and social emotional learning for students. So the legislature is starting to kick into full action, and we'll be hearing more about that as time goes on. Each year, Beecher Road School and Woodbridge School District does an annual survey of all of our stakeholders, our parents, our staff, and our students, our upper grade students. And so we're planning on administering that survey in March this year. And in that survey this year, we will have some additional questions related to the school calendar, as well as questions related to our upcoming strategic planning process. In the area of facilities and security, I'd like to again thank the town for including us in the LED lighting upgrade, and we received an email today from Betsy that said that it looks like in the next couple of weeks, Beecher Road School will have their work start on the LED upgrade, so we appreciate that very much. We've also benefited greatly from the services of safety consultant Eric Tordahl, who is here tonight, and I know will be in an executive session in a few minutes to hear Eric's comments and his thoughts as we move forward. Lastly, on the PTO news front, the PTO held its second annual Boosterthon. We have an amazing PTO, and they ran this event last week. There was many smiles of students gracing the halls and exciting, happy voices. It was a rousing success. It was both an event for health, but also an event for fundraising, and the PTO raised over $30,000. We'd like to thank all the parents and other family members who obviously donated money to the PTO in recognition of this event. So thank you, PTO, for all you do for us. And that's the end of my report for this evening.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Thank you. Stick
Okay.
around.
All right.
Thank you. We move on to item 3, executive session pursuant to section 1-200, paren 6, paren C, security at Beecher Road School. I would invite into executive session Tony Genovese, Jerry Weiner, Andy Esposito, Bob Gilbert, and Eric, of course, our consultant. So I will entertain a motion to that effect. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We are now out of executive session. No motions were made nor votes taken during that executive session. Item 4, under the first Selectmen's report, this evening we have a very long Board of Selectmen meeting with 4 executive sessions. Shortly, we'll be discussing the proposal for the Country Club of Woodbridge. I can remind you that the current proposal is for the town to sell approximately 60 of the 155 acres for $5.4 million for construction by Insight Werner of no more than 120 units, freestanding active adult 55-plus housing. The town will retain approximately 95 acres, and we have set aside funding for a landscape architect, land use analyst to advise us on the best passive recreational uses for the undeveloped land that the town will retain. As I have stated so many times before, I am voting in favor of scheduling the referendum because I believe that the voters should decide this most important issue. Tonight, we will not discuss the issue of the Darling House Historical Society and Cohen Farms. I believe that all of the members of the Board of Selectmen are in agreement that this issue should not be decided in a quick few minutes without further extensive discussion. We've decided to give both groups a little more time, and I'm hopeful that we will have a positive meeting with them later this month. At our January meeting, both parties agreed to meet and to attempt to come to a solution that will enable the Historical Society to continue to run the Darling House Museum, which is what they have done for many, many years, and allow farming to continue on the property independent from the museum. Perhaps I'm naive, but I still am hopeful that if both parties compromise just a little bit, we'll be able to resolve this. We will have a special meeting on February 25th at 5 p.m. to listen to both parties and hopefully make a decision that settles this amicably. Since our last meeting, I attended the retirement dinner for former Human Services Director Mary Ellen LaRocca. I attended the monthly SCROG, Southern Connecticut Regional Council of Governments meeting on January 22nd, and I was elected to serve as chair of SCROG for this calendar year. On January 24th, I attended the wake for the Orange Fire Marshal who sadly passed away in a tragic accident here in Woodbridge. I attended Commercial Property Owners Forum at the JCC, organized by the Economic Development Commission on Tuesday, February 4th. I have also had several meetings with Woodbridge business owners over the past month regarding economic development. And with that, we will move to item 5. Executive session pursuant to Section 1-206D and 1-210B1 regarding contract negotiations for proposed sale of a portion of the former Country Club of Woodbridge property. I would invite into executive session Jerry Weiner and Tony Genovese. And even though it's listed that we have an action as appropriate on matter discussed in executive session, I anticipate that we will not have an action this evening. So is there a motion to go into executive session for those reasons? Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Sandy. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Sorry. Here we go again. Okay. Thank you, everyone. The executive session has ended, and I can report that there were no motions made nor actions taken during executive session, and there will be no action on that matter this evening. Moving on to item 6, liaison reports. Sandy.
I attended the Library Commission meeting on Monday, and I'll just mention 2 things. There is increasing concern about the lack of lighting in the parking lot, both the side lot and the main lot. So there's a suggestion to basically work with our maintenance crews to try to see what we can do about that lighting, to maybe repaint all the lines and the curbs with reflective paint, something that would make the safety component of that lot better.
Did they bring this to the attention already of the building or public works or whomever?
I don't know.
Or is this our job at this point? I'm happy. I just want to know.
I can let them go back and make sure that they have done that.
Yeah, that would be good.
And the only
Directly, because I'm not sure I'll get it right, and that way,
Okay.
if they do it directly, would that be a good suggestion? Yeah. Okay, thank you, Sandy.
And then the second thing is Lynn Sarah is retiring, and she's a big loss for the library, but her retirement celebration will be on March 31st from 4 to 6 p.m. In the community room.
Okay,
And that's it.
okay, thank you. Joe?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I attended the Fire Commission meeting on Monday, February 10th. To quickly summarize in regards to the current financial situation statements, The chief reported that they're on target. There are some truck issues and some hydrant issues. In addition, it was disappointing here that Karen Kravis, a valuable member of the commission, resigned, basically because of the dispatch issue. In regards to the apparatus, there's going to be needed a DOT inspection on the brakes and wheels. And unfortunately, new engine 3 has been delayed to May. To May. Also, the EMS issue, which is very concerning to all of us. They're waiting to continue to speak with the attorney to see if they could resolve that. The shed that they've been working on, they've asked for an increase in size, but they're waiting for inland wetland review. The chief reviewed what's going on with their space in the old firehouse. Fire marshal's report, you have 49 inspections, 1 fire inspection. One particular facility had 6 inspections in its own. And in regards to executive session, there was no action taken, and that concluded the meeting.
Thank you.
Questions?
Right.
I just want to follow up with Joe. I did attend the inland wetlands meeting on January 15th. Some applications were okay, approved, 2 applications. We also discussed the possible expansion of the storage building behind behind the new fire station, as we discussed in our January meeting. Just, is it, would it be, okay if we did that? Not. They actually scheduled a site inspection. We did a site on January 18th. They looked at it. They held a special meeting on January 29th, and the consensus was that the expansion might happen. We could probably do it. There were some specific conditions associated with that, but that'll come before the board when we finalize what we're going to do with the old firehouse, the use, and if we are going to maybe possibly expand the storage shed behind the new firehouse. It is doable, they said. They won't, but again, we would have to go through all the details, the drawings and all that to show them, okay, the effect on the wetlands.
So they didn't say how much they could expand, but there is some room.
We could probably double the size of the shed going east. So where the shed is right now, if you
Yes.
look at it,
Yes,
we can expand to the left and we can go another 40, 45 feet.
okay, great.
And that would be, they looked at the condition of the land. It is doable.
That's great news.
It is doable, but it's just something that we have to get an architect, site engineer,
Oh,
do all that, but it is doable, so it's
Great.
and they issued minutes to that, which I think, the town received. I attended Human Services on February 3rd. Just a few quick highlights. Volunteer Tea is going to be held on April 23rd, and they stressed that. The letters of intent for the new Director of Human Services is due, I believe, this Friday, Tony? The 14th? Correct. So, and they sped that. They're looking to hire possibly some college interns to help with their program. That was thing. The 8th graders, they're holding a Mardi Gras event at Amity High School on Saturday, February 22nd for all 8th graders, and, wrapping up all the towns. They're also looking to set up a conference with Orange to discuss the dangers of vaping. So they're looking to do a special thing to bring the parents in and all that, and also with the children, the older children. Orientation for 6th grade at the middle school is going to schedule for February 27th. And the December-January newsletter was sent to about 3,500 households. And that's about it.
Thank you.
Looks like a lot of people for public comment, so I'll skip my typical comprehensive.
Okay, thank you. Given there are a lot of folks for public comment, I wondered, we're going to get Adam in next, because he's, yep, I'd like to do that, if that's okay with everyone. So I would ask Adam to come up and talk about the parking spots over Fitzgerald. Thank you.
Hello, everybody.
Good evening.
Plan.
What has happened is because,
What's that?
well, I'll just preface your remarks. What has happened is we have a lot of folks using the Fitzgerald Field for many things, and because of that, increased interest, we have it in our, we need more parking spaces. Before we begin, Adam, I just want to remind everyone, I'll put it on television, I guess, that certain folks have said that there were reserved spots for the dog park, or reserved spots for the walkers, or reserved spots for the farmers, mini gardens, right? And there's absolutely no reserved spots for anyone other than the handicapped spots. Nothing is assigned to any particular group.
No, it's.
With that, go ahead.
First come, first serve.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I've been asked to go over there and find parking. So there's basically three options. So everyone knows when you pull into the parking lot, you'd have to cut into the forest to expand the parking lots, parking spaces, but that's probably a no-go. You could, on the left going in.
On the left as you come
Yeah,
in.
yeah. I mean, you'd have to, cut all the trees down, expand about, 24 feet by 200 feet plus. Cut all the trees down, remove all the stumps, dig out all the material, and then build a parking lot there. So another spot is where actually the dog park is, where the old ice rink was, which is fenced in now. And the third option is encroaching out into the field. And in that drawing that I gave everyone, the orange is where the expansion is, and the yellow highlight is where the parking is now. We have approximately 34 parking spots right now. So, on a busy, beautiful day with the dog park and everyone walking down there, they're parking on Beach Road. So if we expand out into the field and in front of the old ice rink, it'll bring an additional 24 parking spots. That's it.
What's the expansion, what's that footage?
That footage is 27 feet by approximately 200 feet,
27 feet.
right? There's a little buffer area there where there's some stones and high weeds, which, the farmer doesn't mow. If we go out that way, it'll be 17 feet by 188 feet of field that we're gonna need
Oh,
to
so,
fit more cars.
so it's 17 feet is what you're trying to capture for the.
Right,
parking.
right,
Into the-
exactly. But that's just gonna be out in the field. That little buffer area is just a high weeded area. But actually, out into the the farmer's field, it's 17 feet by approximately 200 feet. We'd have to rent an excavator, remove all the material, bring in some road base, and then top it with stone dust. So,
So one of the questions that's been
Yep,
raised
yep.
is if we expand this to
Yes.
basically 58 cars, and we only have one entrance, people are coming in and out that same entrance, that should we not look at creating a way in and a separate way out, so traffic goes in one direction only for safety reasons?
You could, sure you could, yeah. You'd have to actually, you can't really do that, or expand
Well-
the entrance going in and out of there. You'd have to expand that, because you'd be crossing the walking trail.
Right, well, the walking trail could start at that point as opposed to.
Yeah, you could, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think we need to take a look at that from a
Okay.
safety perspective, because we're really increasing
Right,
the number of cars there,
Sure.
and there are a lot of kids that come, there's the running club, I mean,
understandable.
that's what I would recommend that we take a look at before
Sure.
we go ahead and do all of this.
Okay. There's only a few trees there, very small trees,
Right.
pretty much, and just,
So it may not be that difficult to
No,
create
it's not that
an
difficult.
exit onto Beecher Road.
yeah, yeah.
We have curb cut issue though. You have to have a proper authorities. That's not a state,
No, that's
No.
not a state
state
road.
road.
That's not a state road.
Beach Road, no.
But we still have, do we have a traffic, we still have to do
traffic control commission.
It's more than just doing it. is what I'm
Right.
saying.
It's more difficult, right.
I
But there's
think
no,
we
is there any reason why you can't start this and simultaneously
Why
do
don't we
that?
ask the traffic
This should-
authority?
this should
That
really
makes
get-
sense. We could refer this to the traffic authority if everyone's okay.
Yeah, I mean, we literally could start
Ask
this,
them to take a look at how we can better do the entrance and
Right.
exit.
Okay.
if you give me permission, we could start this immediately.
What is
You
the
could start the
consensus?
parking, the additional parking.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah.
What's the consensus of the board? Go ahead.
I'm fine with it.
All right.
I'm okay with it.
Great, thank you, Adam.
All right,
Okay,
that's it.
Good.
thank you.
All right, thank you.
Before we go to public comments, we have two very short items that I'd like to resolve. Item number 10 and number 11. If that's, I will ask consensus. Number 10 is act on the Girl Scout Troop 60164 request to install a little free library at Pease Road. Would you like to come up? Here they come. Good evening. You just have to state your name and your address for us, please. Sorry.
Where I live? Oh,
Just, it's very quick, sorry.
Margaret Kirshner, and I live on 86 Wepawag Road.
Thank you.
I'm Elijah Sherman, and I live on 107 Pease Road.
I'm Ty Forrest, and I live at 34 Wepawag Road.
I'm Mila Maynardovich, and I live on 66 Deer Run Road.
Thank you.
Do I start?
Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Maggie, and I am here with Ty, Eliza, and Mila. We are from Girl Scout Troop 60164. We are here to talk about the little free library we are going to be making at Pease Park. Thank you for taking your time to listen to us. When kids and adults come to Pease Park, they can bring any level books and exchange them.
So first kids put the book in the box, and then they can take a book in return. The Little Free Library can have any reading level, including books for adults. We brought a picture to share with you of what a Little Free Library could look like. A Little Free Library would also be great for kids and parents to enjoy. A lot of kids read books, and it can boost reading levels and book enjoyment. Parents can enjoy reading while kids are playing and doing sports. Thank you for listening.
Anyone have any questions? Comments?
Where is this gonna be?
You're going to do it at Pease Place Playground,
Place at the
correct?
playground.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And will you need to raise some money to be able to buy the little library?
We already have a little bit of money from our cookie selling orders, so we won't need to raise that much.
Okay. And how will you decide which design you're going to go with?
Well, we're still really deciding on that, but probably the more books, the better.
The more
Okay.
books,
The bigger the better.
Okay.
And are you going to maintain this? The troop is going to do what?
Yes, we are going to maintain this and keep it under control. We're planning to check on it every 1 or 2 weeks, and we might have some rules on it just to make sure no one vandalizes it.
Okay. You might want to also work with the Friends of the Library, because they may be able to provide you with books to keep populating the free library.
Very good.
Okay?
Any other
Great
questions?
project.
I'll make a motion that we approve this.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Thank you. All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you
Good
very
job.
much.
Great.
Thank you. And speaking of the Friends, I see Donna Lehman in the back. If you could just come up and give us a quick explanation. And the Friends of the Library want to put up a banner for, I believe it's in June, Donna? Yes. Yep. Name and address for the record, please. Thank you.
My name is Donna Lehman, and I live at 4 Carriage Drive. And I'm a member of the Friends of the Library. And we would like permission, as we come every year, to put a banner up on the triangle outside the old firehouse to publicize our book sale. It's the same banner we put up every year, and it says book sales first weekend in June. So we came to.
I'll make a motion that we approve the banner as described and as passed out.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Thank
Well,
you.
thank you all, and come to the book sale.
Yes,
And we'll help
that's
the Girl
wonderful.
Scouts. I'll talk to them on the way out.
That's great, thank you. Moving on, we'll go back to item 8, public comments, 6:15. I'd just like to remind everyone what I said last month about public comment. It's each board or commission's chair's prerogative to set parameters for public comment. Going forward, if you feel you need to respond to an attack or when facts are incorrect, feel free to do so. Public comment should be an outlet for residents to share their ideas or concerns. It's not an opportunity to misrepresent facts intentionally or not, and it's not a platform for accusations. Hopefully, everyone will be respectful of each other. We are all Woodbridge residents, and we all care about what we believe is best for our town. Because I suspect we have so many people here for public comment tonight, and because we have a very long agenda, even longer than last month, I will ask that you try to not repeat what others have said and that you keep your comments to 2 minutes. Mrs. Shaw has a timer, or Betsy does, I'm not sure. Okay. And she'll be using it to help us be mindful of each other's time. Thank you. And with that, I would invite public comment to begin. State your name and address for the record, and then take your 2 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Chuck Pine. I live at 162 Center Road, and I'm here on behalf of the Woodbridge Republican Town Committee, of which I am the secretary. The Amity and Woodbridge Historical Society is an integral part of the fabric of Woodbridge, and recent attempts to recast the long-standing arrangement between the town and the society have created an unnecessary rift between town government and many civic-minded Woodbridge residents. The Woodbridge Republican Town Committee supports the position of the society as continued stewards of the Darling property and associated buildings that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the updated management agreement. This motion passed unanimously at our meeting last night. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Amy Morella, 184 Rimmon Road. I offer this letter as a former first selectman of the town. Members of the Board of Selectmen, without getting into specifics, I suggest you consider the overarching interests of the town that are reflected in the current dispute. On balance, it is far more important to the town to renew its cordial partnership with the Amity Woodbridge Historical Society, also known as AWHS, than to allow one person to farm on town land and or rent a town-owned apartment. The volunteers of the AWHS offer a fine example of the dedicated volunteerism on which our town depends to function and thrive. These volunteers and their predecessors have enriched our town for many, many years. The AWHS has engaged in research, preservation, and stewardship of our history and historical objects. Through AWHS publications, these volunteers have shared their research results with the broader community. Annual AWHS programs, including tours, tavern nights, and ice cream socials, bring our community together for fun and fellowship. In support of the AWHS's efforts, the caretaker apartment at the Darling House was always rented out to someone whose sole involvement with the Darling House property was taking care of the buildings and grounds. Only recently did a tenant seek to farm as well. Howsoever one assesses the current tenant's efforts, the reality remains that the tenant is subject to a year-to-year lease that time limits both his access to the apartment and his ability to farm town land. I hope you will agree with me that the town's larger and longer-term interests warrant focus on continuing cooperation between the Board of Selectmen and the AWHS. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Alexia Belpron, 478 Main Street, Portland. I'm here as the president of AWHS. 10 months ago, I phoned First Selectwoman to let her know that based on the Historical Society's decades of experience as long-term agents for the town, we had concluded that a farm and the museum must be separate. I'm forced to be here yet again with the same message, which has before been ignored. It is impossible to have a living history home museum exist in the same space as a for-profit farm. There is nothing the Board of Selectmen can do or say to change that reality. You must make a choice. You can choose to support the nonprofit organization that created, maintains, and has grown the living history museum that exists for all of us today, or you can choose to support one farmer. I want to ensure you that you understand that if you choose to keep a for-profit farm on the Darling Museum property, you will lose the museum. And importantly, for all of the taxpayers of this town, you will lose the financial support of the Historical Society. Remember, we built that caretaker cottage. We did the renovations to make a museum. And we do all of the maintenance, the routine maintenance, groundskeepers, masons, electricians, plumbers. We've paid them all. And we wrote grants to get capital improvements for that property, and we have paid all of the utilities for the property for decades. Our successful operating model that includes modest rental income from a caretaker that wants to work with the Historical Society to maintain the museum not only provides a steady income for maintenance of the property, but provides oversight that reduces maintenance costs that no electronic monitoring system will ever replace. As a nonprofit, our fundraising dollars have gone into this property. We have the ability to receive grants specific for nonprofits, such as the Good to Great grant, which you have put in danger. If you do not choose to support the Historical Society and the needs we specifically laid out in the letter we sent to you, you will lose our financial support. You will lose the museum. You will lose thousands of volunteer hours that we have put into that property for decades.
Is that the 2-minute warning that's been
Yes,
okay.
I'm almost done. If
Okay.
if you move forward with the alternative plans for this property, you will lose the National Historic Register status of this property and lose any chance to get any state and federal funding for that property ever again. And you will lose priceless cultural and historic resources for town residents. How much are you willing to cost taxpayers? How much are you willing to throw away and thus deny residents for one non-tax-paying for-profit businessman? You have one good choice in front of you. One choice that's logical, reasonable, financially responsible, and ethical. And you have one last chance to make that choice.
Thank you. Next. Is that it? Nope, okay.
Barbara Baldwin, 46 Orchard Road. I am reading a letter from Joanne D'Angelo, who could not attend tonight. Dear members of the Board of Selectmen, I write to convey my support of the Board of the Amity and Woodbridge Historical Society and the two requests contained in its letter to you dated January 30th, 2020. I have had direct experience with the Society in two capacities. One as a town council from 2001 till 2006, and the other as president of the Garden Club of Woodbridge. While I was the town council, members of the board appeared periodically to seek approval of their selection of a caretaker for the Darling House and the related lease. There was never any controversy, and the Board of Selectmen seemed to value and rely on the input of the Society Board. More recently, as president of the Garden Club of Woodbridge, I had worked with the members of the board to further the relationship the club has had since 1974, when the Society began its oversight of the Darling House and land on which it is sited. From the beginning, the Garden Club members regularly visited to record and advise changes to plantings on the property. More recently, Garden Club member Leslie Martino designed and installed an herb and kitchen garden there with the assistance of the Boy Scouts as part of her advanced landscape design studies in Boston. Since then, the Garden Club and Society work together to maintain and renovate the garden as needed. In my experience, members of the Society are some of the most dedicated, competent, and cooperative volunteers I have worked with in Woodbridge. I genuinely hope that this situation can be resolved and that the board will agree to the Society's request, which seem reasonable and to the town's and taxpayers' benefits. Sincerely, Joanne M. D'Angelo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happens all the time. Good evening. Lynn Donato, 23 Mettler Street. I am speaking for myself and on behalf of the Woodbridge residents who cherish our historic Thomas Darling House, farmstead, and properties as a treasure to our town. The members of our historical society have done an outstanding job in keeping the Darling property in its unique and authentic state. They are committed to safeguarding and preserving this estate's collections and continue to work tirelessly to defend its integrity. Their mission to preserve and educate remain ever constant. Once any extreme measures are taken to deter this mission, i.e. taking down structures or building new structures or major changes of any kind that are not in line with the preservation of historic sites, means that the Thomas Darling estate will lose its historic fabric forever. Please allow our society members to continue in their dedication to preserve this property and allow them the latitude they need to get their job done. Thank you.
Thank you.
.315 Rimmon Road. And nobody here is going to like what I have to say back there. I've watched and listened to the drama unfold at town meetings between the town's tenants at the Thomas Darling House, the farmer who pays $12,000 a year in rent, and the Woodbridge Historical Society that pays $1 a year in rent. As a byproduct of the feud, I have watched in disbelief and disappointment as the Historical Society fired the one volunteer, a renowned professional historical preservationist named Leland Torrance Sr.
Could you speak up?
Is your mic on?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I guess you got to pull it closer.
Historic preservationist named Leland Torrance Sr., who has for years kept and would have continued to keep the Thomas Darling House maintained true to period. What I fear will happen now with no qualified replacement for Mr. Torrance is that the Thomas Darling House will deteriorate beyond the point of no return.
I think we all need to be as quiet as we can, please.
It is my understanding that Mr. Torrance donated countless hours and expertise, as well as skilled craftsmen to attend to the upkeep required of a house built in the 1700s. Through Mr. Torrance's dedication to the historic preservation of the Thomas Darling House, he has saved the town thousands of dollars. One must ask what motivated the decision by the Historical Society to remove Mr. Torrance from providing oversight of the building known as the Thomas Darling House, which he did for 19 years. And in fact, how did the Historical Society have the authority to ban Mr. Torrance from the property? It appears simply to employ an age-old method of divide and conquer due to the Historical Society's belief that Mr. Torrance supported the farmer tenant's position and not the tenant Historical Society's position in this tug of war.
We're close to the 2 minutes, but so read fast, please.
I'll wrap it up.
Thank you.
It's a sad day for Woodbridge. These actions will only hurt everyone that professes to care about the Thomas Darling House. The baby will be split in half, and everyone will suffer. To believe otherwise is simply foolish. I do not have a horse in this race or a dog in this fight. My only connection with the Thomas Darling House is that I love Tavern Night, and I applaud the great job that is done at those events. However, the immature, unfounded, uncooperative, divisive behavior that has been on display by some members of the society would give me pause to ever want to support them again, and for that I am very sorry. Threats by the Historical Society to remove historical artifacts connected to the Thomas Darling House in an effort to bully the town into seeing things their way is childish at the very least. I say let them take them. Then perhaps the town and those that truly care about the Thomas Darling House can go on with the incessant toxic negativity, threats, and bullying being heaped upon them all by certain members. I implore you all to find a way to heal this divide or sever the diseased parts and move on. No good will come of extending this senseless stalemate.
Thank you.
Good evening. I am Ginny Reinhardt. I am the president of the Orange Historical Society and the curator of 3 town-owned buildings. And I'm here briefly to say that we in the historic communities want to see the Amity Woodbridge Historical Society maintain the buildings as they were for the past 45 years. We have been volunteers with Woodbridge, Amity Woodbridge. We have worked closely with the historical societies together, and we feel strongly that to divide the house from the barns and the sheds as you would divide a mother from a child is not in the best interest of history. And if you change the history of Thomas Darling's homestead, you have changed it forever. And as the land may go fallow and the interest in the farming may wane, the house and the land will never be the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Dean, 8 Mulberry Road. I'm the Vice President of the Historical Society. I would like to focus for a moment on a matter about which everyone here and everyone in the town agrees, and to bring what should be good news. The various proposals that have been presented to the Board of Selectmen about the Darling House property contain some good ideas, and I want you to be sure you're aware that the Historical Society already has many of them in hand, or is planning for them. A case in point is the need for restoration of the Yellow Barn, which is being much discussed as part of this controversy. The Historical Society already has its restoration in hand. Last summer, we brought in an historic barn and a preservation grant expert to advise us, and we initiated the course of action they recommended for the Yellow Barn, and indeed for all the buildings and potential archaeological sites on the property. That first step is to submit a survey and planning grant to provide the professional analysis and budgeting that's essential for subsequent big money restoration grants. We were poised to prepare and submit the paperwork. Remember, this is last summer. We were and are the only people who are prepared to do it. So why wasn't it done? Because all our time since last summer has been taken up with this endless job of trying to protect the museum as a whole. But the Historical Society does not want to wait any longer. We will proceed to prepare the grant application, and the town should be able to submit it within the next few weeks. That's the good news. Here's the bad news. We've had to discuss with the State Historic Preservation Office the reason for our inability to start work on the Good to Great grant, as well as to make them aware of the alternative plans for the site, some of which would harm the preservation of some buildings. They were very concerned. The first selectman should expect a letter soon, possibly a phone call. As Alexia mentioned, the state is the only source of preservation, the largest source of preservation and restoration money. And if the town continues to be thought a questionable preservation partner, it cannot expect that this or any future applications to the state will be approved for funding. Forestall that. sign the agreement with the Historical Society, accept its recommendations for the management and use of the site. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn Piazek, 80 Woodfield Road. I am here to read testimony from Senator George S. Logan, 17th District Senator. Testimony of February 12, 2020, in support of protecting the house, grounds, and outbuildings of the Darling Homestead and Museum, also known as the Darling House. First Selectman Beth Heller, Deputy First Selectman Mika Cardoza, Selectman Joseph Crisco Jr., Joseph Dye, Dwight Rowland, and Sandra Stein. I am, and I read his words, I am Senator George Logan, and I offer this testimony in support of efforts toward resolution between the town of Woodbridge and the Amity and Woodbridge Historical Society to protect the Darling House and assure a long-term sustainable plan so that current and future generations will have the opportunity to learn and experience the rich heritage of this truly historic site. The Historical Society has demonstrated a long and consistent commitment to preserving history and educating the community via various programs, activities, and collections. Working in partnership with the town of Woodbridge, I am convinced the Historical Society is the best organization to preserve and run a historical house, museum on the Darling House property, now and long into the future. In addition, it is important to the town of Woodbridge and the greater New Haven area that the Historical Society have the support to take advantage of hard-to-come-by state grant funding to complete a capital project, in parentheses, a new kitchen, at the museum. The new kitchen is currently needed and would be a significant improvement to the building and the property with a regulatory code-compliant bathroom and fire mist suppression system for improved safety. He has one more paragraph. Also, I believe completion of this capital improvement, along with a revised long-term agreement, will be helpful towards securing additional state grants and perhaps federal grants to accommodate additional improvements and on-site activities for the community to enjoy. This is a precious opportunity for today's local leaders and community to come together and make a bit of our own history by securing a revised long-term agreement between the town of Woodbridge and the Historical Society to ensure the preservation of the Darling House property and establish a way forward that will minimize instances of future misunderstandings between the two parties. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm here to make a statement, but also I would like to read a letter written by my brother, Andy German, who is the author of the biography of Thomas Darling. And I'm curious, have any members of the board read this book? Have you, Mr. Blackwell? Yeah.
We have 2 minutes.
All right.
You have 2 minutes.
Well, I
so-
recommend, I mean, the
Okay,
reason
thank
I
you.
brought it is to say
Thank
it's in
you.
the library. You can get a copy of the Darling House. But if you are considering this property seriously, I really do think you should read it and give it some thought about the man who lived there and what it means to make changes in it. So I have edited my brother's letter because it is 2 pages long. He says, I grew up in Woodbridge. While I no longer live there, I did write the biography of Thomas Darling, and I have an abiding interest in the stories and values represented by the Darling House and property. Born 300 years ago this month, Thomas Darling did not grow up in a wealthy family, but he was a promising young man who attended Hopkins and Yale, graduating with Benjamin Woodbridge, for whom this town is named. An enlightened man of his enlightened age, Darling was interested in manufacturing, from rope making to glass making, for which he consulted Benjamin Franklin, and in developing the commercial fortunes of New Haven. But above all, he was known for his good judgment. Though not a lawyer, he was a great proponent of English common law and a close follower of legal precedent. For years, he served as a justice of the peace, dispensing thoughtful resolutions to small disputes between individuals or situations that challenged the peace and good order of the community. He also served as a judge of the county court, and he was often appointed to committees to resolve colonial land disputes. And then I will skip down to the second page. Now, as the town considers the uses of the Darling property, I would respectfully suggest that any decisions be made in the judicious, unbiased spirit of Thomas Darling himself. It is a property with many specific stories to tell that reflect upon America's origins and values. As town property, it would fit Darling's concept of the commons, the communal grazing ground, open to all, and not to be improved to one individual's benefit. As community property, its uses should not be altered in ways that do not serve the community at large or without the will of the people being expressed. Thomas Darling would find this an engaging case about the intersection of personal interest and community responsibility. Don't disappoint his spirit with a rash decision. Thank you.
Thank you. If
I may have 2 minutes to make my statement. A month ago, 4 members of the Board of Selectmen held a meeting at the Darling House with members of the Historical Society Board. Also in attendance were Pua Ford to film the visit, Tony Genovese, Adam Parsons, and the farmer Ethan Schneider. After a tour of the caretaker's cottage and Darling House, they convened in the parlor to talk. It's unfortunate that Pua didn't stay to record that meeting because a number of noteworthy statements were made. Sandy said that the Board of Selectmen were coming to the conclusion that the solution to the Farmer Historical Society problem was separation. Ethan agreed to the separation, or to the suggestion of moving his farming operation across the street. He volunteered to give up the acre he farmed around the Darling House and to start improving a new piece of land across the street. He said he'd talked to Chris Sorensen about moving over there. And Chris Sorensen was farming there. But at the January Board of Selectmen's meeting, Chris Sorensen objected strongly, saying he had never heard from Ethan or anyone else about the plan to move the farming over there into the area that he was had been farming. So the plan for the farmer's move was halted. Nevertheless, that solution to separate the farming operation from the 6 acres maintained by the Historical Society is the valid, wise, sensible, cost-effective solution to this inane, festering problem. The new Agricultural Commission should be charged with the task of helping Ethan move to another site. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening. I'm Larissa Crocco, Amity Road. I'm a 3rd-generation resident of Woodbridge, and I believe the first to ever feel the need to use my civic voice, so I guess that's the silver lining here. I want to commend the Historical Society for conducting themselves with unwavering professionalism during a difficult time. Volunteers are the backbone of a community. They hold us up. I have had the pleasure of attending multiple Historical Society events. These volunteers breathe passion and life into everything they do. One thing that stands out to me is at all of these events, there is an amazing cross-section of our community present, from our youngest to our oldest citizens and everyone in between. I cannot think of a single other town event that succeeds in reaching so many of our residents, and I attend many of our town events. I urge you to support the Historical Society and take the actions they are requesting. We need our volunteers. We need to think long-term and preserve the Darling House. We need to ensure that volunteers feel supported and valued so that we will continue to have them and to have a museum for future generations. I urge you to trust them and to know that they've been successful for years in managing the caretaker cottage and take the actions they're requesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Catherine Suttle, 78 Beecher Road. I'd like to register my full support for the Board of the Amity and Woodbridge Historical Society and their comments here tonight. They have worked tirelessly over the years to maintain and preserve the unique treasure that is the Darling House, its outbuildings and grounds. Please don't reward them for that by turning your back on them in favor of a farmer who is running his own agenda at the society's expense. I think most of us in the room care about our unique and historic Darling House and property, and if you don't, you should rely on the people who have the expertise and passion to care enough for all of us. It has been preserved almost intact for 250 plus years and is totally irreplaceable. If you go forward with any kind of building project in the carriage house, as you've heard time and time again, there's no going back, and it's ruined for all time. And if you don't care about that, what a loss for our town. Other Connecticut historical societies are in awe of what we have in Woodbridge, and we should be as well. I'm no longer on the board of the Amity and Woodbridge Historical Society, but have tracked membership for a decade. And I have to say, it's particularly confounding and distressing that our first selectman and Mr. Torrance, who are both lifetime members and obviously appreciate things in history and have generously supported us, are now opposing or putting potential roadblocks in the way of the society's continued good work. I implore you all on the Board of Selectmen to do what you know in your hearts and minds is right and not what friendships or party lines dictate. We elected you to represent the townspeople in the best interests of the town and not those of a single individual. It's not too late to think about what's at stake long term and make the right decision to preserve the town's irreplaceable treasures for future generations to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adrienne Michi Smith, 17 Ansonia Road in Woodbridge. I never thought I'd ever get up here to say talk about anything besides the country club. That's coming. And I certainly never thought I'd say anything about the Historical Society, being a little Italian girl from Derby. But I have been listening to this whole thing, and I think I'm going to say some things that are a little bit more provocative and from a slightly different angle from other people's perspective. I was at the last meeting, and I understand that Mr. Snyder's still in the house. Is that correct? He's still living in the house?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I have heard that from various people that Mr. Snyder, that the Historical Society would like Mr. Snyder to be gone because he's not been fulfilling his duties. A whole bunch of things that have happened that have not been in the interest of the Darling House. And when I heard Mr. Snyder at the last meeting, he got up and he said, well, in order to run my farm, I need this, and this from the cottage. And I have also heard that the utilities have skyrocketed. Now, I have been, Michael Broderick got up and addressed this, and I was under the impression that members of the board, and correct I'm wrong, are in support of this young man. I have 3 kids about his age, and my husband and I have always taught them that they have to go out and learn how to survive on their own. Without mom and dad, they have to find something that supports them. They have to be able to make a living. And I really got the sense that this young man, excuse me, with all due respect, is very entitled, and he's getting kind of a free ride here. As a taxpayer in this town, I resent that. I resent having my taxes go to pay for whatever utilities or whatever that this young man is using. Especially, I am going to bring up the country club since we keep hearing how much money this town needs, and we need to sell the country club in order to pay for stuff. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, okay.
Anyone else? Are you serious? We got a whole room full of anyone else.
But I'm going to be very quick.
Okay,
okay.
this
We're
is
here.
just from the standpoint of, this town has depended on volunteers for as long as I've lived in this town. I have volunteered for recreation, for the country club, for the golf course, for whatever. And I think that it takes a lot to run this historical society, of which I know very little. My only statement is, I think the board really needs to respect the volunteers. I'm kind of fascinated that we have a dog park, which volunteers got us, and now we need to put money into the same place that the dog park is because we don't have enough parking. Interesting that volunteers got that done, and now the town is going to have to do something so that those of us who really like the Fitzgerald property as it was and hopefully will be, can use it again because of the parking and the gardens. So all I'm saying to you is, I just hope you respect the volunteers who've put so many years into this property.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Melissa Silverstone, 31 Penny Lane. I'm just a lover of history, and my fear is that the destruction that is going on at Thomas Darling House, you know, what happens at Thomas Darling House while things are not being taken care of, what is ruined or destroyed there, you know, what's lost in history, what's lost now can never be regained. It's gone. And this is not only Woodbridge's history, it's Connecticut's history. And when it's gone, we can never get it back. And you know, I love history. I don't want to see it gone. And so I'm just asking the Board of Selectmen to please respect the wishes of the Amity Woodbridge Historical Society, and, you know, please respect their wishes in their letter of January 2020 and take them seriously, and reread their letter, and please take what they're saying very, very seriously, and don't let any personal feelings overcome you. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is what the hot seat feels like, I guess.
Hi, Will.
Will Brinton. I live in Bethany, 168 Sperry Road. I'm a member of the board of directors of the Bethany Historical Society. Here to support our neighboring historical society. And I don't want to repeat a lot of the stuff that has already been said. So for myself, full disclosure, I'm a life member of both the Bethany and the Amity and Woodbridge Historical Societies. But I haven't been very active in it the last 20 years. I've gone to tavern nights and Christmas parties and talks that they've held. I can speak, however, for the 20 years prior to that, in the 80s and 90s. My father was a member of the board. He was chair of the Building and Grounds Committee for about 20 years. And just so all the stuff that I'm seeing and just what I'm reading, not an expert on what's happening at the present. However, it is very distressing because the relationship with the town and the Historical Society has, for the 20 years I can speak for, been excellent, a wonderful relationship, wonderful partnership. And the caretaker would pay rent. I mean, I'm sure it was a lot less in those days. I want to say it was around $500. I have no idea what it is now. But all that money, my father had a capital plan. It was 5 years or so, And that money all got plowed back into the property. The Historical Society didn't put it in their pocket. They didn't spend it on other things. By and large, to my knowledge, the vast majority of it went for roofs and painting and projects. It went back into there was a plan, the money went back into the property. So that's really all I had to say, is that I hope it was a wonderful situation, and I hope that, very hopeful that we can get back to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Michael Broderick, 5 Old Still. I drive by the Darling House every day from my home to my office, and I noticed just a trashy appearance the house has taken on. It's quite jarring to see a plastic greenhouse and plastic all over the fields of a historic property. And it really, in all the years I've lived here, which is over 40, I can't believe this board is actually entertaining the the position of a tenant farmer who violated doing his duties over the Historical Society. I just don't understand what's wrong with the board. It's such a no-brainer decision. And I really feel like you are not protecting the public trust with your actions supporting this farmer. You should be protecting our town. What is going on? And I think Woodbridge politics has come down to a very sad state of affairs when one person in the town pushes for this farmer and that overrides the majority of the community. Something is seriously wrong here.
Thank you.
Good job. So I'm not going to repeat points that they brought up, but I do have something to say that nobody else
You
has
have to
brought
give
up.
your name and address,
Oh.
please. Thank you.
Karen Lucan, 21 Westwood Road. But the one thing I have to add that nobody said, Beth, I've always voted for you. I've always been pleased with your stewardship. But there's something really rotten going on here. I have no idea why this board has continually supported this one tenant farmer as opposed to what everybody said, the town. And I just lost confidence in all of you. And so I'm going to send a copy of my letter, which I'll give to you tomorrow, along to the state's attorney general, because something is seriously wrong here when one person who's not even a resident of the town is getting all this favored. I have no idea why. I mean, he's not even paying for some of the things that he's getting. Like where he has the he's using one of the buildings for a cooler for free. It's just stinks. And all the pros and cons and the whole thing, nobody has been able to explain to me why this is happening. So maybe the Attorney General can get to the bottom of this. That's all.
Thank you.
David Lober, 35 Weppawag Road. It is said when you find yourself in a hole, you should look for a ladder, but some seek a larger shovel. Such seems to be the case with the administration's dug-in position regarding the Thomas Darling House and the tenant. The administration continues to side with the tenant farmer, formerly the caretaker, not even a Woodbridge taxpayer, against their own agent of almost 50 years, the Amity Woodbridge Historical Society. By his own admission, the farmer has not paid himself $1 from this enterprise in 4 years. So clearly, it is a failing business. It's a hobby, not a viable business. So now we have an administration siding with a hobby farmer who clearly does not depend on this work for his livelihood, and who now proposes to live in the caretaker apartment rent-free, depriving the Amity Woodbridge Historical Society of a significant source of income. He also wants upgrades on the utilities at the town's expense. So how do we make sense of this? I suspect, as this evolves, we will see a paid manager position created out of whole cloth, just as we saw a paid grant writer position created for Beth's campaign manager, a position that was not filled after that individual left. Leland Torrance has been intimately involved in all the negotiations between the town and the Amity Woodbridge Historical Society concerning the farmer, even though he should have no standing. I suspect this position will be for him. I am disappointed by the patronage and cronyism exhibited at the federal and state levels. It has no business there nor anywhere in politics. Woodbridge can do better.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Marguerite Dillaway. I live at 1196 Johnson Road. I was not going to speak tonight, as I don't usually. However, I went to my yoga class this morning at Center School, and I walked out and looked at this beautiful town center. And I said, although I've lived here for 30 years, I've always thought I was a newcomer. After 30 years, I'm not a newcomer. This is my town, too. And I want to say that I'm just alarmed, incensed, and just appalled that the Board of Selectmen would even consider interfering with the work of the Woodbridge Historical Society, who's been doing their work passionately for the past 45 years, just to the benefit of someone who wants to make a profit. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. That it? Oh, Don?
I'm the end of the bookends. Don Menzies, 1880 Litchfield Turnpike, Woodbridge, past president of the Amity and Woodbridge Historical Society. I know I only got 2 minutes. I don't even know where to begin. There's so much stuff rolling around inside my head. Most everybody has addressed some of the things I've written here tonight, but by golly, it took me 3 days to write this, so I think I'm going to read it anyway. How is it in less than a year we've gone from receiving the praise of our membership, by the way, everybody, thanks for coming out tonight, and visitors to our darling house, every town administration except the current one, and various organizations at the state level as being the voice of history in Woodbridge and historic preservation for one of the state's best preserved historic properties. How is it that we are now characterized as a selfish group of, and I quote, busybodies, who, while maybe providing some service to the town, are now more or less unable to maintain the property? How on earth is the darling house still standing after 45 years if it's only Leland Torrance that can take care of it? Buildings in deplorable condition. None of them are in deplorable condition. None of them. Including the outbuildings in the backyard that were called decrepit. None of them are decrepit. And been unkind to their caretaker. We tried. Lord knows we tried. Why is it that the town has chosen to elevate the status of the for-profit business to supersede the mission of the volunteer nonprofit? You've heard all that. And that it's the work of a very few wealthy and powerful people who believe they can do it better. Our fear is that when all is said and done, they'll make their changes, and the property is forever altered, their plan will fail after a few years, and they'll just walk away and blame someone else. We will always stand up and advocate for the preservation of this iconic assemblage of historic buildings. I'm sorry, the Darling House is like a second home to me. This is tough. As they stand now with their current configurations and intentional lack of non-historic beautification schemes, we believe the Darling House right now looks like it looked like in the 18th century, and that any plans of anyone else to change that are just foolhardy. It just is. We believe that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I ask you, as we approach the special meeting on the 25th of this month, that you put aside any party allegiance, you put aside the advice, the opinions, the needs of friends, those who may or may not have a vested interest here, and look only within yourselves and decide what the best path is for property. I ask you to look back 50 years to the vision of the town and society leaders that put together a plan of preservation and education that has flourished and grown over that nearly half a century, contrary to any public opinion you are hearing nowadays. And then look ahead to the next 50 years. Where would you put your trust? In an ephemeral plan designed by a few that will radically and irreversibly undo the work of generations of volunteers? You've heard already that the Historical Society has plans that would work for preserving that property as it has always been doing for the next half century. Preserving, programming, educating, it's what we do. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Thomas Wheel. I live at 70 Woodfield Road. I'm a published historian, lifetime member of the Historical Society, and I couldn't agree more strongly with the requests of all the people here that you put Humpty Dumpty back together again. It was not something that needed to be broken. I would ask that you look at that agreement and consider signing it. I'm going to change the tune a little bit. You talked about respect, and I hope that when the contract that we've all been waiting for the Country Club of Woodbridge is finished, respect will be shown to this town and people interested in this by making copies of that available and sufficient time available for people to be able to read it and see what you've done and hopefully applaud what you've done. But if that time and access is not given, then there's not respect being shown. So that's a choice, and I hope we'll see the respect. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I yield the balance of my time to whoever wants to speak.
Good evening, Barbara Fabiani, 20 Dillon Road. In the recent flyer I received from the Amity and Woodbridge Historical Society, it indicates that this property is on the National Register of Historic Places. That puts that property in pretty good company. Other properties listed are the Old State House, the State Capitol, the Charles W. Morgan, a whaling ship, Connecticut Hall at Yale, the Agricultural Experiment Station, the Emma Berry, a Noang smack, one of the oldest serving commercial vessels, the Prudence Crandall House, the Litchfield Historic District, the New Haven Green Historic District, Grove Street Cemetery, Philip Johnson's Glass House, the USS Nautilus, a nuclear submarine, a passenger steamboat called the Sabino, the Henry Whitfield House, which is the oldest stone house in the nation, is the oldest stone house in Connecticut, and lastly, the Yale Bowl. I would say this little property is in very, very good company. So I urge you to support the board and the work of the Historical Society to the greater good of the town. And I hope you'll think very seriously about the importance of the property, its place in history, and its place in our town, and respect it in context, which means including the property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Rebecca Harlow, 1112 Johnson Road. Over the last 10 months or so since we've been working on this, we've actually faced a lot of criticism and taken a lot of heat. We've been verbally assaulted. People have had their homes vandalized. And we're kind of tired of it, to be honest. And
I'm
you
sorry
know,
to hear that.
Yeah, you
Homes vandalized. Was the police called?
You should be. It wasn't my home. I won't go into details.
No, I mean, not me.
No.
People who...
I know you didn't vandalize the home back.
I don't know how to do that, but no.
At least
my
I'm pretty
question
sure you
was,
didn't.
if they were vandalized, did they call the police? Because that's terrible to hear.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, I would highly recommend whoever that happened to call the police.
I agree. And I will tell
terrible.
you that, all of those criticisms have come in various forms, you know, what we're doing with our time, what we're failing to do. I have a 2-year-old at home, and I can tell you I would have much rather just been at home with him or devoted my time to doing the actual work that needs to be done at the Historical Society instead of coming here repeatedly to talk to you about the same thing over and over again that really shouldn't even have to be said. You know, basically what we have here is just a failure to understand each other. And I feel like there's 2 fundamental misunderstandings. You all don't understand why we need a caretaker because you've made some calls and you think that you've gathered all of the evidence that you need. You should know that our caretaker model is actually based on a fundamental best practice of museum stewardship. And the fact that we were innovative enough to create a sustainable model for on-site museum oversight is not something that should be punished. And the fact that other small historic house museums either lack the foresight, the funding, or the infrastructure to adhere to that best practice is really irrelevant. It's not really up to you to understand historic practices, particularly if you don't take the time to actually understand or work in a museum. You know, the other thing that I would invite you to do if you call any of these places back that say they don't have a caretaker is ask them if they would willingly attach a living space to their house to have an adversarial tenant who directly and intentionally interferes with their ability to carry out their mission and provides no financial benefit to them. I'm pretty sure they would also say no. One of the other points that it continues to be made, and we don't understand this, is you keep talking about the value of this farm to the community, and we all agree farms are valuable, but I haven't heard one person satisfactorily explain why this particular farm is of such great value to this community that a nonprofit organization should be forced to use its funds to subsidize it. I just don't understand. And once, the last thing that you really, I think, should understand in case it isn't clear is that we aren't going to be forced to subsidize this farm anymore. So once you lose us, what happens? Are you going to find another nonprofit organization to force to support this farm? Are taxpayers going to have to support this farm? How is that going to happen? He's already said that he's not making a profit. So where does this end? You know, you have all these plans for this property, and you know, aside from the fact that it's clear that these other competing plans are just based in their own self-interest, they show a complete lack of understanding of what a historic site is or what it needs. You know, a strategic plan is supposed to involve stakeholders and, you know, gauge community interest. It's supposed to be effective and relevant and actionable. And all we're seeing is just people's plans to benefit themselves. You know, one thing that should be pointed out too is that you're not going to hear any plans that involve us leaving. You basically just want to force us to deal with the situation that you're throwing at us, and that's not going to happen. What benefit is the town receiving from one single farm where you have to pay to, you know, he's not giving away fruits and vegetables, you have to buy them. So where's the benefit to the town? I don't understand why this is something that we keep having to come here and discuss with you. Let's see. I'm going to steal someone's time, make sure that I have my notes. I think that's it. You guys get the point,
Thank
right?
you. That it? Oop.
I'm Lisa Flaherty. I live at 139 Beecher Road, and about 2 months ago, we appointed a relocation of the collections in the Darling House, and I am the chairperson. I just want to let you know that we will indeed move all of the collections out of the Darling House if we have a vote for Cone property. So that means we'll separate. I'm saying that if we have a vote for Cone Farms over the Darling House, that all of the collections inside of the Darling House will be relocated and the Darling House will be empty. So I just let you know that we have another meeting coming up, as you know, on the 25th, and we are prepared to start moving all of our collections out, in which case you will have an empty house. Historical Society will still exist, but we will not exist at the Darling House. So I just want to make that clear that is indeed our intentions. And I want to thank everybody who came out tonight and our support, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, okay. Oh.
Good to sit down. I'm Richard Weiss, resident of Brantford, 33 Thimble Farms Road. And I just like to preface my comments. My background's deeply rooted in historic preservation and volunteer work. I'm on the board of the Connecticut Trust, where I've been an active board member for many years, involved in a lot of restoration projects. And it's distressing to hear all the sort of rancor that's arisen over these issues. I'm sorry for that, and I'm not here to foment more angst. But I want to point out before Mr. Blackwell speaks here about Ethan. He works about 80 hours a week. He has a day job as well as what he does on the farm. And, he's a very rare individual who's dedicated himself to doing this farming. And it's not a lucrative enterprise, if you might think, but I think it's a wonderful thing for the town. So my my more formal comments here.
Please be respectful of each other. Keep your comments.
So I'm an architect and preservationist with Greg Weiss and Gardner Architects, New Haven, and I'm here at the request of Dick Blackwell. I've preserved a variety of historic buildings ranging from New Haven Center Church on the Green, the Yale Law School, Yale Beinecke Library, Yale Center for British Art, on another scale, Brantford Stony Creek Puppet House, now becoming Legacy Theater, and many others. You have an absolute gem here, distinguished 18th century farmhouse complete with furnishings, artifacts, outbuildings, and 150 acres with great public visibility. Route 69 has about 9,000 vehicles passing by daily. And there are unique advantages in operating a farm together with an historic museum. Successful examples of this are Dudley Farm, Guilford, Parmalee Farm, Killingworth, and Nathan Hale Homestead in Coventry. Farmland and historic buildings are disappearing at an alarming rate, and maintaining these properties requires perseverance and commitment. Unless repairs are undertaken in the near term, you will start losing bits and pieces of your buildings, and the landscape needs attention before nature runs completely amok. And more should be done to protect museum artifacts and increase public access. It's time to put in place a long-term plan coupled with a comprehensive maintenance and repair program. You are unique in your assets and well-positioned to receive more state grants like the recent Good to Great grant. And incidentally, these state grants don't require a full-time caretaker. Find ways to further enhance these assets to reach a broader audience while providing a much-valued link to our past. Seize this opportunity to provide educational experiences for the public and promote tourism in our state. And use the best practices available, the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. Well-established goals and standards which will make you eligible for further funding. I'd be happy to be part of an oversight group to preserve, protect, and promote public enjoyment of this property. Let's all do our part to continue the vision of Thomas Darling and honor his family's gift to the town of Woodbridge. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Dick Blackwell. I live at 15 Park Lane, and I certainly love the history of this town. I'm a member of the Historical Society, and I have 5 grandchildren who live within a 10-mile radius, and the reason I'm here, I certainly am not making money out of this, but I'm here because I believe in the property, and I frankly love what the Historical Society's done. I love the tours, and I'd like to see them do more tours. I'd like to see them be open more frequently. And what I would recommend to the Board of Selectmen is the Amity Woodbridge Historical Society stated in their correspondence that they want to protect the house, the grounds, and the outbuildings. And my recommendation is, first, the grounds and the outbuildings do need substantial help. I mean, and what I'd like to do is make this property more available and more helpful to the rest of to more people. As Rick stated, there are 9,000 some odd cars passing by the property. And I know I have 4, and when they stop by, they don't even know that it exists. I mean, it just blows right by most people. I think if you were to do a random canvas of people that are residents of the town, I mean, I know these people are very much wired into it, but I mean, it's not showing to its best potential. And I love what the Historical Society is doing, but my recommendation is to approve to have the board approve an oversight group which would consist of the Historical Society membership, the town, residents, and I'd like Rick to join us. And that would obviate a lot of the need for a caretaker, which is not required for the Good to Great grant. 90% of the work is done on the grounds, and this oversight group would oversee that. It's a 2.3 acre parcel. There's did you handed out the aerial? It's 153 acres, but 2.3 acres of this is a responsibility right now. It's overseen by the Historical Society. So I'd like just to look at a couple of, just two, for instance. When I said, I'm not trying to pick at mites here, but what I'm saying is I think there's opportunity to make these buildings more attractive for the community to tour. I'd like to see more community involvement in this land. That's where I'm coming from. And the barn is a good example. There's the back side of the barn is collapsing. The barn is collapsing. It's got a tarp, somebody put a green tarp over it. It's got water coming into it. There's junk, which I'm told is a dilapidated one-room schoolhouse that, which is not complete, and nobody wants it. There are no takers. Anybody wants it, hold their hand up, and I'll provide a U-Haul. But nobody wants it. And the Historical Society, I said, is telling me they're interested in getting rid of it. But we need to clean it out. And I wanted to show pictures of what's in that barn. Just by the way, I passed out pictures. There's a sleigh in there, which is I guess close to 200 years old. It's sitting in the. Do you have one of those?
Yeah, we have it.
Okay. Well, this is the inside of the barn. I think he's saying that.
I think you're on the over the 2 minutes. I just said that.
Fast.
I just said that. I think you're over the 2 minutes. So, if you could wrap, please.
Okay. Anyway, they
Thank
can look
you.
at this chart. But anyway, they're
Thank
precious farm implements in there, and the grounds are overgrown. I sent the pictures out here. The bottom line is, I'm all for the Historical Society. I'm putting up money where my mouth is. I've set aside $10,000, $6,500 for the barn to support the barn, $3,500 for the grounds, and I'm willing to contribute more, if necessary. It'd be great if the Historic Society didn't have to spend $30,000 plus on attorney fees. I mean, fighting it out. I'd rather see the money spent on the building.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We got to make sure everybody's done, but I think that's it. No, that's us. I do have a question for the Historical Society. What is this January 2020 letter? I don't. Oh, that letter. Okay, it looked like she held up a newsletter or something. I don't know. Yep. Do we have the newsletter? Was there a newsletter in January?
Yes, we sent it out last week, I believe,
Oh, okay.
and Muffy has copies
I'm
here.
a member and I haven't gotten it. Thank you. Thank you.
But the letter was the letter that you all received by certified mail.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay. Is that it for public comment?
Can I make a correction? please, to the last statement.
No,
We-
I don't think so at this point. I haven't responded.
It's one sentence.
Okay,
Well,
one
two
sentence
sentences.
is good.
The Connecticut State Historic Preservation Architect and a circuit rider from Now Preservation Connecticut have both been in that barn within the last year and said that it's structurally sound. It is not falling down.
Okay. No, we can't, we've got hours here, hours, please. Well, we don't want to do that, Joe? I don't care about that. I'm not here to get votes. Not. Okay. Are we done? Okay, but are we done with everyone who has not spoken this evening? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak this evening? Okay. Okay.
My name is Allison Jensen. I live at 46 Newton Road, and I have not been a member of the Historical Society, and I have been a fairly recent resident of Woodbridge, living here only about 15 years. But I have been to the Darling House, and it is darling. And from what I understand, the whole dispute is over a tenant who wasn't living up to what the Historical Society wanted the tenant to do. And for 45 years, this arrangement has worked perfectly fine until this one tenant came in and disrupted the whole thing. And I don't quite understand why we have to uproot the whole agreement and working relationship because of one individual person. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is it? Okay. Thank you. Moving back to the agenda, item 9 is award farmland leases for the 2020 growing season. You have a packet, you have a list in your packet of all of the town-owned farm properties for lease. We will not be taking up the 1907 Litchfield Turnpike Fields at the Darling House because we're going to decide that one on the 25th. Correct. Okay. So that being said, I'm sorry, what?
There was a corrected list at their place this evening.
Oh, okay.
You had it already.
I have
in
it
your
already.
book.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. If anyone wishes to consider conversation, could you take it? Thank you so much, so we can keep going. So you have, I guess, a corrected lease list of the properties. There's also a summary of the request for the lease of farmland. Would you like me to read that, or have you all looked it over? Everybody comfortable with that? Okay. Jerry Shaw kindly put in a copy of a sample of the lease of town-owned farmlands. And I hope you have all reviewed that, because I really don't want to read 4 pages. No? No.
Yes, but that's the field north of the stone wall. That has been historically hayed by Sarah Shepherd, and this year she didn't want to do it. But that has nothing to do with. Yeah, so it's Tim Kriz will be doing that, if you lease it to him. But
Okay,
it's
so you
but
also
it's
have
north.
in your packet copies of the request from each of the individual farmers. I know it did come up, I wasn't sure to talk about this, but it did come up that a lot of the farmers, including Chris Sorensen last month when he was here, suggested that we won't do it now because we have to renew them for this year, but perhaps we want to take this up again late fall or December so that these guys have enough time to buy their seed and make it easier for them. They know they're going to have the property for next season, because he was, yeah, okay. Well, I wrote down 10/31/2020 maybe as a possibility. We can, it's Halloween, I'll remember that date, but we'll do it around, if that's okay with everyone. I just wanted a consensus on that going forward for these leases. Okay. Great. So the question is, would you like to do this as a group? I can read them all, or
Can I just ask one
Tim?
question
Oh,
about the actual lease?
yes.
There is reference to, for $1. I don't understand what the dollar is in comparison to the $10 per field.
It's just a legal form,
It's a
of legal
legal-
consideration. It could say $10. Doesn't matter.
We don't get paid anyway.
Yes, we do.
Oh,
We get the
most
$10.
certainly do. Of course we do. Okay. Would you like to change it to $10? I don't care. Okay.
Just change it to 10.
Okay, all right.
Change the lease?
Okay. It's $10 per field, correct, Jerry?
Correct.
Okay,
For each field leased.
right. Okay. So, I guess given that, I'll read the list, unless you need me not to. Tim Kriz, 13 Bear Hill Road in Bethany, wants 1936 Litchfield, 1966 Litchfield, the Eicher property, if I said that correctly, and 1907 Litchfield Turnpike, the field north of Stonewall, Lower Field, adjacent to West River, and the Zwick property, 282 Seymour Road. Access is difficult. He has an agreement with the owners of the adjacent property to access the field through their driveway. Chris Sorensen is requesting 420 Amity Road, 1910 Litchfield Turnpike, the field behind the yellow barn. As
No.
occurred,
I think he lives, is he requesting 420 Amity
No, he lives at
no, he lives
He
at
lives there.
420. What did I say?
Road? Requesting 420.
Requesting.
He's only
Okay,
requesting A
thank you,
or B.
Joe. I didn't sleep at all last night, as the song goes. 1910 Litchfield Turnpike, field behind the yellow barn. And as a courtesy to the town, Chris mows the town-owned lease property on Rimmon Road to keep the scrub down. Keith Arnold, who lives at 127 Beecher Road, is requesting the Fitzgerald property, 2 front fields and lower field. Keith seeds the 3 fields and harvests the resulting hay. And he's also requesting Peck Hill Road, Eldersley property. He hays 3 fields there. Christina and Oliver Holland at 48 Center Road is requesting the Alleghi property at 160 Pease Road and a portion of 52 Center. Last year, there's been an agreement with the Recreation Department allowing cars to be parked on a portion of the property during the soccer season. I guess that will be included in her lease again, his lease or lease. And the Hollands would like to consider a 5-year lease to allow them to apply for agricultural grants. So, do we have to do these individually, Jerry?
Well, the only problem is, you could do them all at once, but are we considering, 2 things, I have 2 questions. Are we considering the 5-year? Because you can't do them all.
I don't personally want to consider the 5-year lease at this point. We have
Okay.
to look at.
So they're all 1-year leases?
Yes, at this point.
My other question is.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I'm all for that, but
Okay.
I'm just raising the issue. If you want
Yep.
to do them all at once,
Mhm.
we have to specify that the Hollands would be 1
Right.
year like everyone else in that.
Right, okay.
And then Keith Arnold, B, Peck Hill Road, Eldersley, Hayes, 3 fields, just a question. Is that 3, does he pay $30 or $10?
He does.
He does.
Yeah.
So that's
And I
3
guess he
separate
pays, it
fields.
sounds like he pays 20 for Fitzgerald,
I
right?
just wanted to clarify that.
He
Yep.
he actually pays,
That's 3, he would be
Three,
he does the
30.
lower field too, so he pays $60 total.
30 and 30.
30 and 30.
Okay. Okay, so I'll make a motion that we approve the requests that I just summarized from the 2020 request attached as of February 6, 2020. Is there a second? Any further discussion on any of these?
All 1-year leases, right?
All
Yep.
1 year.
Thank you.
And all in accordance with what we just discussed on the
Thank
record
you.
there.
Okay.
Is
that's a
is
good-
the 5-year lease something that we want to ask the agricultural commission?
We could
when
do
they get
that, but we're not
established?
going to vote for it tonight.
No, no,
yet.
no.
No, but we can
I
refer it to
understand
them.
that.
We can refer it
That's a
to
good
them.
idea.
I don't want them to feel that we're not paying attention to it, but it's not
We can
common
refer it to them.
practice. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
I think that's a good idea. And, sure, should we make that a part of the motion, or just?
No,
I think
no, no,
so.
no, no, it doesn't have to
Fine,
be part of it.
okay, good. All right, thank you. Thanks for your friendly part of amendment to that. May we have a second?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. Moving along. Item 13. Does everyone need a break? Nope, okay. Cool beans. What?
With your wimps?
Well, you know about
No, that's
nature,
good.
right?
That's a good.
Good idea.
All right, fine.
5 minutes.
Well, then I'll need one too. All right, we're taking a break.
This.